You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com to see the many different shirts we offer. I'm your co-host, Aaron McIntyre. Other co-host, you may have seen him walking out of a great clubs with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him at a dirt track. He is Scott Bally. Hey, Scott. How's it going?
Hello, Aaron. How are you, bud?
I am doing fantastic. We have a great show today, and we're changing our format a little bit on this one because it is a little longer, and I think for some of the longer ones we are going to do this, we're going to split it into two parts. So the first part will be this week, and the second part will be next week. And this is a great one to do it with because our guest is Willy T. Ribs.
Yes. Willy T. Ribs. Wow, what a great conversation. Willie's got a story for everything. And Willie is a funny man. He's been through a lot, ups and downs. Guy loves auto racing. He loves just life, I think, and what a pleasure it was to talk to him. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, great guy. Probably one of the funniest people I've ever talked to. Before we get into anything else, just wanted to thank everyone for watching our video so far, for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as like us on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, anywhere where our podcast is found. We definitely appreciate the support. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll definitely have a lot more great podcasts coming your way.
Yeah, and we just finished recording one that it's pretty short, but it's still a good one, and it's I think some people find it interesting. Just the little train that could, or whatever you want to call it, but it's a feel-good story, and I think people are going to really enjoy it. And we've got others that we've already recorded that I think people are going to enjoy. And I noticed that we are gathering subscribers. So we do very much appreciate that. And just want to say thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, pretty exciting weekend of racing, to say the least.
Yes, it was. You know what? Oddly controversial in some ways. I wasn't quite sure of why people were upset over the track having problems at the Speedway with the Cup cars. I mean, I get it to a certain extent, but I mean, it's a racetrack. I've seen several other racetracks have problems. For some reason, that curve was
Atlanta.
Atlanta. I mean, was it Daytona? Didn't some of the concrete come out of Daytona a few years ago? Or I mean, there's tons and tons of tracks, IndyCar and NASCAR. I mean, it just is going to happen from time to time. I know that the principals at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will cure whatever the issue was with those rumble strips or curbs or whatever you want to call them. So I just thought it was funny to hear people talk about all the damage, and I'm like, well, you run Daytona and Talladega twice a year, so I don't know if the damage from the Speedway quite adds up to that, but.
Right. And speaking of the principals at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, how about Doug Bowles on the track sweeping up the debris?
Did anybody think that was going to go any different than that? I mean, Doug Bowles, he is hands-on. He's hands-on with everything. I mean, I saw a tweet. Somebody tweeted at him that there was somebody had a problem at the Speedway, and they tweeted at him, and he was like, "Hey, get my DMs. Let me see what I can do for you." I mean, it's like that all the time, and it's not a show. It's not glad handing. It's not only when the camera's around. That's how that guy is, I think. And I think he truly respects and understands that he is just a caretaker and of something that's going to be passed to someone else, and he hopes for a very long time. He's trying to leave it a better place than where he found it.
Absolutely. So IndyCar race, great race. I think Will Power finally broke his curse.
Yeah, the Anvil missed him this week. It kind of it didn't hit Scott Dixon, but it must have gotten his way because man, that was a performance that you don't see out of that team.
Right.
They weren't fast pretty much kind of all weekend in an odd way, and boy, kind of surprising. I mean, because he really, if he could just had a Scott Dixon type of weekend, he would have really closed in the points, but he didn't. And these young kids are coming. Alex Palou was going to have a great day, and he had a turbo fire or whatever put him out of the race. So, and Pato had a great finish. And we saw that kid from, I'm not sure where he's from, but he was driving for Ray Hall, qualify so well. And man, these and these guys are coming, and they're more sniffing around. So this IndyCar racing is definitely trending upwards.
Yep, and Alex Albon was walking around the paddock area talking to a lot of the teams, so I definitely expect to see him in IndyCar next year.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. I think there's going to be some others, and whether F1 teams are looking to park some of these drivers in IndyCar, I don't know, or if these guys are just seeing real opportunities. You hear Alex Palou talk, and he's like, "Hey, this is where I want to be. This is who I am." He feels like this is some of the greatest racing you can do. So it's definitely we're catching a great mix of the new, of the young and the older. I don't want to say older. Right now, and hopefully everybody takes this in because this is not going to last much longer. And these newer kids are going to come along, and some of our older favorites are going to be gone.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, but I thought the IndyCar race was great. I thought the Cup race was good. That's the first Cup race, or maybe the second, that I've watched completely all the way through in 10 years.
Yeah.
And they were racing hard, and they were kind of beating and banging. And not that I think that makes for great racing, but I mean, they were trading position. And
yeah,
hey, man, I love the oval as much as anybody, but with those cars, they don't race well there. That's just kind of how it is. So they found a good race. And unfortunately, they did have the issue with the curb that, kind of soured it a little bit. But it didn't really sour it for me, but for some people it may have. And that's too bad. But I think they said, well, this race, we'll remember this for years to come and all that. I don't know about that. I mean, you come back next year and put on a great show, this year's forgotten.
But yeah, absolutely great to see, AJ Allmendinger win. Great guy. Right. Really cool to see him, talk about Bob Jenkins, give Robin Miller the shout out.
Yeah, I agree. And, Robin's there, and Robin's, he's fighting. And unfortunately, we lost Bob. And, and today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they did a tribute to Bob that you can find, I'm sure, by now on YouTube. They streamed it live. And but AJ was, in his victory celebration, was so kind to mention these people that you don't have to. I mean, it's easily forgotten, right? But AJ, and I don't know much about AJ, but it tells me he's a pretty mindful guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, obviously he had a good run of the 500 one year, could have easily won the race. So definitely, great to see him win Indy. And I'm sure if you asked him if he could win one race in NASCAR, I'm sure Indy would be near the top of that list.
Yeah, I think so too. Would his belts come loose or something, right? Wasn't that the deal when he lost the 500?
Yeah, something like that. I don't really remember. I know they were talking about it on TV yesterday that he almost won the race, and I do kind of remember that, but I don't remember what exactly happened. Yeah. But I mean, ever since that guy was in Champ Car, if you remember when he went in Champ Car, I mean, he was just like winning everything.
Right.
Yeah. There for a while, and just great road racer. When you look at road racers in America, I mean, he's definitely near the top of that list.
Yeah, and he was so disappointed when he didn't win the Xfinity race
Mm-hmm.
that he was really crushed by that. But then he comes around the next day and everything just lines up perfect. We got to talk about Chase Briscoe, Indiana boy. Had a great day. He was fast all day.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like that penalty. I mean, of course, it's their rules, and rules are rules. I mean, he come back out exactly where he was when he got run off the track, because he was forced off the track.
And that was by Denny, right? Denny forced him off the track.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I understand. I get it. But, I mean, he was thinking he would just drop two wheels off and then fade back. And, and the kid said, no, I'm going to just cut across. You run me off the track, I'm just going to cut across. And he entered. He didn't really gain a spot.
Right.
So I kind of felt like if you don't gain a spot, I don't see where the harm is, but they call it. I mean, that's fine. And then then he ends up dumping Denny, whether he did it on purpose or he says he didn't. I will tell you that it looked like Denny had a problem with his car as quickly as Chase caught him. So I thought that was kind of strange how fast he caught him, because, I mean, Denny looked like he had lost power.
Yeah.
So, and obviously he hadn't. So, I mean, who knows what really happened there? But he had a good showing for himself. And then you got to talk about Kyle Larson.
Yeah, I think that's a question that's been going on for the past year: is who can stop Kyle Larson?
I don't think. Man, I don't know.
I mean, he would have easily won that race.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if things would have ran out, he would have easily won it. Although I was thinking about it earlier, and I mean, if the curb's going to break apart, it's going to break apart anyway, and it's going to do damage. So you're going to have a yellow or a red or whatever, whatever you're going to. I think you were going to have that anyway. But, he goes to Knoxville. Wins one of the biggest races that in his mind he can win.
Yeah.
Sheds tears in victory lane. For a guy who's not very emotional. Doesn't party. Kendra Jacobs, who runs.
Fly straight to Indy. I was going to say fly straight to Indy. Got here at like 4 a.m. and then qualified, third? I mean, what did he qualify?
Yeah, like third, something like that.
Yeah, at 9 a.m. So.
Yeah. Kendra Jacobs, so she runs Knoxville, and she comes from a racing family. But she's one of the people in charge of Knoxville Speedway. And she was talking about how she's so used to, after the winner wins, they got a bar there called Dingus, and they all go and party, and and all of this, that, and the other. And there's video of Kyle. He's standing on a stage or a picnic table or something. He gives a toast to everybody, and he says, "Well, basically, I got to go." And they said that as they were still standing there, they saw his plane fly over heading to Indy. So it shows you how committed he is right now. And I'm going to say something here that's probably some people are going to find a little controversial, but this come to me as I was watching the race yesterday. And I started to think that maybe one of the reasons why Larson is doing so well is because Larson is a professional race car driver all the time. He's not trying to be a businessman. He's not being a father all week, although he loves his kids. And he has kids, but he goes off and races 2, 3, 4 times a week before Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And he's treating it like his job.
Yep, and he's constantly in that mode.
And I'm not so sure that isn't beyond his great talent. That isn't what's separating him maybe from some of the others right now who are being businessmen, businesswomen, who are, raising families and going on trips and all that during the week. And Kyle Larson's racing, and he's racing everything he can get into, And he's got must have a checklist in his mind of races that he wants to win, and he's going to win them before he's done. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, speaking of, races he wants to win, there was an article that Robin Miller released either today, it must have been this morning, about, that he needs to drive in the 500. And I know Larson's definitely interested in doing that. And I think that would be great for the sport. And he had a quote in there from Jeff Gordon about Jeff Gordon talking about how, he's one of the best talent that he's seen. I mean, just about ever. I mean, you're talking about once in a fifth generation driver.
And that's a man that could stand and look in the mirror and say, hey, at one time I was one of the greatest talents ever. Because anybody, and I've said this on this show before, anybody who had the pleasure of watching Jeff Gordon race when he was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, my goodness, boy, he was unbelievable. And, what's the old saying, game recognizes game? And Tony Stewart's probably sitting there telling those Ford execs every day, hey, I wanted him, and you guys wouldn't let me have him. Now look what's happening. And, and I understand the controversy, and I understand the stigma, and I'm not saying that what he, I would never condone what he said. And, but on the other hand, he has been contrite. It appears by all circumstances, he's trying to be a better person. And he is just before you thought he was focused on racing, now he's laser focused on racing. And, man, hats off to that guy. I mean, people say, well, he may be greater than AJ Foyt. And the only thing I'd say to that is he may be as good as AJ, but Parnelli goaded Foyt in to run a sprint car at the Indy Mile when he told him that he couldn't beat Poncho and he couldn't beat Opperman. And he went out to the Indy Mile when he hadn't run sprint cars for a few years and beat them both. So,
right.
I would never tell you that he's better than AJ. But I would tell you that he is that rarefied air for sure.
Absolutely. We talk about how, focus he is on racing. I will say, I know after pretty much all the races he does, especially dirt races, he stays in the pits a couple hours after and signs for every single fan.
Right.
And it just definitely shows that, he definitely cares about the fans. And I mean, he knows what, gives him his paycheck at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And, I said this, when he won one of the midget week shows last year. He get, at least for those races, he would get out of the car, he would celebrate, on the cage or whatever for the moment. And you just kind of see this look come over him in his eyes. And then you can already see him thinking about what he could have done better and this, that, and the other. And goes and takes care of his fans. And then, he's off to the next race. And I mean, boy, this is rare stuff we're watching. And hats off to him. And, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see – either we'll never see this again or we will see way more of it because of him. And I don't know which.
Oh, yeah, no, without a doubt. Well, I think is there any other racing news we missed? I don't think so.
Not really. I mean, it really was a Kyle Larson weekend for the most part, and there was the great, really the great job done by the Speedway and NASCAR and IndyCar to put all that together, and really, sometimes when you see those things, there's a little bit of cross fighting and arguing and all this kind of thing like that, and you didn't really hear any of that. Guys complaining about these cars or that cars, or so I thought it was a great success. I personally think for the people who think that wasn't a great race, I think the average fan thinks it was a great race, and I think it's going to be a bigger crowd next year. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what those ticket sales look like for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will go back. I was there, and yeah, it's definitely the best racing I've seen of NASCAR on that track. That's for sure.
I
That's
can't.
no question. You can't argue.
You can't argue that. I do wish the Xfinity cars ran Raceway Park. Not to say I don't want to run not to say I don't want them to run the road course at Indy. I do wish they were back at Raceway Park along with the trucks, because that was such a great event in Indianapolis, and especially for the track itself. But that's a little selfish on my part. And maybe one of these days we will see that again. But right now, I think they got a great package and a great show, and man, I think the sky's the limit for IndyCar right now, though. I really do.
Yep. I mean, we're gonna have sounds like Jimmy Johnson doing the 500 next year. We can get Kyle Larson in there. That'll be one hell of a race.
I mean, there's gonna be you start hearing all these cars for next year, and there's gonna be bumping. I mean, I mean, real bumping. I mean, there was bumping this year, but the talent level is so deep. That's the crazy part. I mean, and I won't say names, but I would say that there's only maybe two guys that you could really point to and say, I don't know, and I'd say that not wishing them ill. I wish they, but every weekend they're just not great. And I hope they do pick it up, and I hope they somehow something good happens for them. But that's pretty good. I mean, that you can't really ask for much more than that.
Oh no, not at all. Well, I think we'll go ahead and listen to the Willy T. Ribbs interview, part 1.
Yeah, please enjoy, because we sure did.
And make sure next week you tune in for part 2. Our guest today was the first driver to break the color barrier of the Indy 500. He won 17 TransAm races and had a documentary released about his racing career in 2020 called Uppity, the Willy T. Ribbs Story. We're joined by the man himself, Willy T. Ribbs. Hey, Willie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Well, and I don't want you to forget those 10 IMSA races I won as well as the races I won in England and the championships over there. So it's been, there's been a lot that's happened over the last 40 years,
right?
Easily, 40 years plus.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess it's hard to make sure you include everything, but no, thank you for pointing that out. So obviously your documentary, I've watched it about 5 times. I actually watched it again last night. And for those who are wondering where to watch it, you can watch it from Netflix, which is pretty cool. You're on Netflix.
Well, it was about a 3-year project, and we went, to, of course, London to interview with Bernie Ecclestone, and the Unsers, of course, in Albuquerque and Indianapolis. So it took about 3 years from start to finish, and editing was 8 months alone.
Right. Yeah, no, great documentary. So, and obviously you talk about this in the documentary a little bit, but talk a little bit about how you first got interested in racing, and the first time you actually got to drive, some type of race car.
My dad was racing as a kid. My family had a successful plumbing company, and that my grandfather founded, and then he also got into real estate as well, commercial. So when my dad was young, he was motorcycle racing. When the war was over, when World War II was over, he started racing motorcycles, and then he got older. And when I was born, he started racing cars, sports cars, and Lotuses and Elvas, and so that was my introduction. And I was pretty much born into it. And that was where it all started. And I knew at an early age, by the time I was 9 years old, I knew where I was going to do as a career.
Right. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you know, it's one of those things. Once you're born into it, it's really hard to imagine life not being a part of it. You know,
Yeah,
for myself, it was that way. You know, my dad worked on race cars and stuff like that, and I've been around since I was a little kid. And it's just hard to have a life where it doesn't include racing in some way or another.
you know, and I was lucky. I mean, you know, a lot of, you know, these diversity programs in auto racing and drive for diversity and all that. There was no such thing as that when I came up. I mean, I was exposed to it, and that's the best way to be involved in from the beginning. Is it, you know, to have that exposure and learn it from the time you're a kid. I knew at 9 years old what cambers were and what bump steer was in those days, and pretty much the technical side I learned at an early age. So when I went to England, I knew pretty much what I needed to do and how to start and how to succeed.
Right. And so, and as you explained in the movie, so you actually paid for Formula Ford with your college money, right? I'm sure your dad probably wasn't too happy about that.
No, no, he had no problem with it because he was already in the sport. I mean, it's what he loved doing, and he couldn't take it to a professional level because he had a family and a business. And but you know, for me and my siblings, you know, my sisters one went to Stanford, the other one went to Santa Clara University, the older brother went to Berkeley for a while. I wanted to go and start my racing career, and so they had no problem with it. My grandfather, he wasn't happy about it, but after a while, when he saw that I was successful at it, he didn't have any problems.
Right. So would you say that when you were over in England, your main goal was to race in Formula One, or was it to race in the Indy 500?
No, it was Formula One. Formula One was first. That's what I was mainly exposed. I was exposed to the Indy 500 because my dad and Joe Leonard were great friends, and they raced motorcycles together. So, but my initial goal as a young man was to be in Formula One. And I saw Dan Gurney was a role model, Jim Clark, of course, Graham Hill, you know, the drivers that were in Formula One in the 50s and 60s, Fangio. I just thought they were where I needed to go. That was my focus. And then Emerson Fittipaldi went over in 1970. He left Brazil. He went to England. He raced in Formula Fords, and then he went from Formula Fords to Formula One. I think he might have did some Formula 3, but that was my playbook. What Fittipaldi was doing, what he did in 1970, when left Brazil. If he would have stayed in Brazil, he'd have never been in Formula One.
Right.
So that was my thoughts.
And so from Formula One, so you actually tested that Formula One car, right? Was it a Long Beach, or where did you test a Formula One car?
No, it was Portugal.
Portugal.
And Bernie Ecclestone, I met Bernie Ecclestone in 1977 when I was racing in England. As a matter of fact, it was my fourth race, and him and his designer, Gordon Murray, came to Brands Hatch. Nigel Mansell was racing that day. I was racing that day. There was a lot of drivers that they were scouting. And at that day, I wouldn't say a lot of drivers, but a few drivers. I didn't know I was one of them until Bernie and Gordon Murray came up to me in the pits at Brands Hatch and says, we're watching you and keep up the good work. And that was worth the whole trip to England. Just those words.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, just those words.
When you, you're coming along and you're a young man and you're just trying to fight your way through like so many young guys. What did you think separated you from the others? Like, what did you think you possessed that they may not have?
I don't know how to answer that. Other than, I wanted.
Right.
I knew I had exceptional car control. That I knew, and
Right.
I had car control when I was 9 years old and 12 years old, and I could control a car in angles that I was very comfortable with doing. I wanted to apply that onto the racetrack, which I did, and just to go fast and not make mistakes. That was what I wanted to do, and that's what I focused on: going fast, not making mistakes, and being able to race someone back and forth and win.
Right. I just always felt anytime I watched you race, especially in the Toyota stuff, it's where I got obviously first introduced to you. Man, you're just so fiery. You were able to live on that edge but not step over it. You're able just to run as hard as you could. And like you said, just have amazing car control and just rare talent. I felt, just that rare ability to know that edge, to race up against that edge, and not to fall off of it.
Well, and I studied the game. I studied drivers. There was one driver that had, I just thought, the greatest car control on the planet, and that was Jody Scheckter. And Jody's 5 years older than me, and I watched him in 1973, I think it was, before I went to England. He was in a Formula 5000 car at Laguna Seca, and he would come down the corkscrew, and he'd come off the corkscrew sideways, and he'd go through that left-hander sideways, enter sideways through it, and he did it lap after lap in the same place every time. And I thought it was phenomenal to watch. As a matter of fact, I mean, I had a little bit of Jody Scheckter style, right?
Right.
And when I met Bill France Sr. at Talladega in 1978, it was in the pits, and Ned Jarrett took me into his trailer. And no, it wasn't Bill France Sr., it was Bill France Jr. And I went into the trailer and sat down. Yeah. So you like this? You like NASCAR, huh? Yes, sir. I like it. What kind of any drivers that you followed? I said, oh yeah, Jody Scheckter. He said, well, Jody Scheckter. He done come down here to Talladega, scared the hell out of everybody. I thought I nearly fell off the chair laughing when he said that about Jody Scheckter. But I mean, and that was Jody. I mean, he was sideways everywhere, but he could control it. And then he became Formula One world champion.
Right. Yeah, a hell of a race car driver.
Yep, and his son wasn't too bad of a race car driver either.
Oh yeah, his son was badass.
Yeah.
And I like them both. Both are just great human beings.
Yeah, Jody used to come to Indianapolis when Thomas raced several years. I got to meet him one year, school to see him come.
Yeah, I sat next to him. I think it was the 2012 race where Jody was up in Pagoda on the 7th floor, and he was sitting there. And I got to tell you, Jody was always cool hand Luke. I mean, he was a real cool cat. But him watching his son, you could tell he was really, Schechter knows the dangers of Indy. And he was it's the first time I ever seen him really on edge watching his son. And I was sitting next to him, talking to him. And he really didn't really want to talk, right? I wanted to just sort of, okay, hey, your son, he's got it handled, Daddy. Your son's got it handled, just let him race. But he was focused in on Thomas, and like I said, Thomas is a really good kid. I know him both.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal race car driver. I thought he was going to get one of those 500s. Like for so many, it just didn't fall his way. But yeah,
it was right there. And for example, I was racing against Marco Andretti in the SRX Series for the last 7 weeks, and Marco, in hindsight, he was right there. I mean, I'm talking about 100 yards from winning the Indy 500. 100 yards.
Yeah.
And after going 500 miles, and and it's one of those things that timing is everything, especially at Indy. I mean, you look at Forleo, that I call him Forleo. It was Forleo, right?
I was like, who are you talking about? Yeah.
And we were in the same trailer every race for 6 weeks, right? Same changing trailer. And the guy is he is so much fun to hang out with. And he's he's really, everything he's done, the guy just is a total character, right? Down to earth, fun as hell. And he said to me, he says, I was always there at the right time. He says, I was fast, but when it came down the stretch, I was there, just like Dancing with the Stars. I mean, he was there.
Right. And I don't mean to jump away from you, but you brought up Marco Andretti, and man, that SRX series, I think we might look back on this, and a couple of things I felt it did. One, Ernie Francis Jr. is now known throughout the motorsports world and the more general public, and good for him. He deserves it. Great race car driver. It looks like they've, Ray and Tony and them, and they got him in there, and the kid showed himself, and man, he's a budding star.
Well, I had been pushing Ernie's name for the last year and a half, and with what he's done in TransAm, everything he gets in, he goes fast in. He gets in the dirt, he gets in the bull ring, and he adapts just like that. And just incredible talent. And behind the scenes, there's things happening. I can't tell you what's happening, but there is stuff happening right now with Ernie Francis Jr., and it is deserved. And
I
he'll
hope
mix
so.
it up.
Yeah.
He'll mix it up. He'll get right in there. I thought he was going to be bashful in SRX. Man, that cat got in there, boy, and started putting headlocks on people.
That's right.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of drama in SRX. It seems like you stayed out of most of it this year, at least.
Yeah, I mean, Dick Tracy and I, we had some bang ups, right? And I think in the series he beat me 3 times and I beat him 3 times, right? And but you know, the fans liked it, and Deegan was great. She was awesome. It was great to race, and it was really sort of me and Waltrip and Elliot and Tracy leaning on each other, right? And then the young kids, they were banging on each other, and that was the great part about it. It was what, one kid was 17 years old, Finhouse.
You're right, yeah.
I'm old enough to be his grandfather. He was 49 years older than me.
Yeah, he did a great job too.
Yeah, he did. It was great to see them because, you know, they were aggressive, but we, you know, and I said this to Tracy. I said, look, how were we when we were their age? Okay. We were going up the mountain. We were trying to climb up the mountain, and we're what they're doing now. We're
Right.
on our way down the hill. So we're heading down the mountain, out the pasture. They're heading up to the top. And I don't begrudge any of the aggressive driving that they displayed at all. In fact, I admired it.
Yeah. And the other thing I thought that series really did, and maybe it's just my perception, I felt it almost looked like Marco fell in love with racing again. Because I think that you could look at that and say that Marco, I mean, you kind of got the impression Marco felt a lot of pressure in Indy cars or something. It's just kind of this intangible thing. I'm sure his friends know about, but a general fan such as myself would not. But it really looked like he just fell in love with racing again.
Well, Marco, a lot of people thought Tracy was the most aggressive driver out there. It wasn't just Dick, right? It was Marco was banging on people just as much as Tracy was. And, if you were to sort of put it in order, Tracy and Marco about dead even as far as banging people, right? Then,
Right.
Deegs, she got in there and muscled it up, and for Ernie and Waltrip teed off on some people. So it was probably the cleanest driver there was Stewart.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Stewart, man, he was like, hey, you guys go have fun beating on each other. I'm going to ride up here on the high groove until the last few laps, and then I'm going to get you.
One of the funniest things I saw was on Haley's YouTube channel, that race where she spun out Paul, or Paul came down on her, whatever it was. There was a point where she thought he was gonna full throttle her, so she got next to Stewart because she knew that he wasn't gonna do that to Tony.
Well, I don't know if Dick was going to actually do that, but of all the races this year in SRX, the fans voted Slinger numero uno of all six. That was the most favorite of all the races, and it was sort of a level playing field, because a lot of drivers have run Eldora and ran Nashville. Well, I think only maybe one driver had been to Slinger. It's a quarter-mile track. That's what they run around. That's what people run around in the Olympics with your legs.
Right.
And me and Castro Neves were up on this perch, watching the Ken Schrader and David Strimmy out testing the cars right on the track to get the baseline set up. And we looked at each other like, have you ever seen anything like this? I said, no. And Castro Neves says, this was, and after the race, he says, this race was like doing 3 Indy 500s.
Oh yeah, man, you're just constantly in that bowl.
You never relax. And to do, I think we did 170 laps around there or something. That didn't include the heats. The heats were 60 laps each. Right? Then we did the main event, which was 177 laps. Are you kidding? I mean, it was boot camp. That was boot camp. And because you don't have time to look in the mirror, because as soon as you come out of the corner, you're looking for the entry. As soon as you come out, you're looking for the entry. You have no time to look up. Castro Neves took his mirror and put it right in front of him. It was over here. Castro Neves said he did not have time to look into his mirror and look back. He had to put it right there so he could just glance up with his eyes.
You know, after doing that, you know, it was such a different type of racing than what you grew up on. Would you, looking back, had wanted to do more of that kind of racing?
Oh yeah, if I would have had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And originally when Ray called me to do this, it was going to be 2 bull rings, 2 dirt track races, and 2 road course races. That was the original plan. That was the original concept. Well, he couldn't really find any road course races where we could run real close and do a 2-hour show in the format that they wanted to do it in. They're going to try to do it next year. They're going to try to have 2 road courses on the calendar. I won't be doing them. I'm done. I'm done. I'll be 67 next year. Let some other superstars come in and do their thing and give them let them have fun.
Right.
But, you know, I would have liked to have done, I really like the dirt.
Okay.
Eldora and Slinger are my 2 favorite races. I love running at Eldora.
Had you ever raced on dirt before?
I did one night in 1986, and it was an invitational race in late models. 1986 in Wichita, Kansas. That's the only time I remember, other than my grandpa's tractor.
When, you know, like 30, 40 years goes by and you're kind of put back in that situation, do you actually remember like some of the instincts like from back then, or kind of how does that work? Like,
I don't even remember girlfriends I had back then. Okay. So,
well, it depends how many you had, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I don't, you know, in all fairness, and I don't mean, I'm not trying to insult anyone or any of my ex-girlfriends or friends or acquaintances, but you don't remember it.
Right.
But you do remember how, and it was the only track where we turned right. I mean, because you at Eldora,
right.
You're down in the corner, you're this, right?
Right.
This, right? Power off, right? Come off as low as you can, try to come off straight, but you're always working the wheel and you're working it to the right, right? I just thought that was the best. That was the best. And Eldora was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's a great
there.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, I just went to Roll of Outlaw race there a couple weeks ago. Great place for sure. And, you know, Tony definitely puts a lot of money into that track. It's a great facility.
Oh, he's done. You know, I'm going to tell you, I had not met Tony Stewart until this year.
Really? That's
never met him. And he is first of all, he's fun as hell. Guys, fun. He's a hoot to hang out with, right? 2, he's really sharp. He's very sharp, not just from motorsports and the technical side, but the business side of the sport. He's a really sharp guy, and he could be in a Roger Penske position one day.
Oh, easy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
He could be in a Roger Penske position.
Well, you know, he's a guy, and Ray is a guy who get things done. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, you can like Tony, not like him, whatever, but you can never say he doesn't get anything done.
Ray Abraham, you mean?
No, I'm talking about Tony and Ray.
Oh yeah. Oh, both of them together, great combo.
Both. I mean, my brothers worked with Ray at IROC in 83, 84 when they were starting that. And that's why I first come around. Yeah, that's why I first kind of met Ray. And he just gets stuff done. I mean, it's just how he's always been. And Tony's the same way. You know, Tony says he's going to do something. Tony's going to get it done.
Well, and if you look at Ray Everham, the guy he's got no fat on him.
Right.
He's got no fat. The guy, he's very lean because he's burning it all off in energy and work. He is, and every day I saw him when we got to the racetrack, he had a pad in his hand. He had a notepad and a pen, and he was just marking it off. Okay, boom, boom. And you know, you got the crew we had, the mechanics, the crew chiefs. I mean, all-star crew chiefs.
Oh yeah.
Todd Parrott, Jeff Hammond, Tony Uri, Scott Hansen. I mean, you go down the line. I mean, these are absolutely Hall of Fame chief mechanics. And I got to tell you, them and the mechanics that Ray hired, it's all-star cast. Everybody was an all-star cast. Everyone involved, from personnel to Ashley Ruggiero. I mean, everybody was just the best. And the telecast, Bestwick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Yoakum, Doherty.
Hinchcliffe.
Yeah, Hinchcliffe. Doherty. I mean, and Doherty, when he walked down the pit lane, you didn't have to look for him.
Oh no.
No.
You didn't have to look. It looked like a damn telephone pole coming out. So I mean, it was a show, and our numbers showed it. Our TV ratings, NASCAR. I think we might have had higher race ratings than Cup in one event, and all the rest of them, we were right there with them, and we beat Formula One, and we beat IndyCar, and we beat Infinity every gig. Every gig.
Yep. It was definitely it was just well done. I mean, just from top to bottom, the way they ran the program, and they made sure they kept the races close, and they did everything they could to give you guys equal equipment at all times. And it was just, I mean, it was just well done. You can't. I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. That's for sure.
Well, the response from the fans after Slinger, for example, the fans came in. And you ever see fans that rush the football field after a game? Well, they came in, and Slinger was packed. There was no room, standing room only. And afterwards, I signed autographs for over an hour after the race. I just sat on the car, and I thought to myself, you know what? These people have paid their money to come out here and watch us, and they've been very patient. And you know, and the kids, all the kids were there. It was just awesome to see the look on their face, and what they thought of the show. That means everything. That for a driver means everything.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's a great point, because within that you're gonna, that series going forward is going to build fans. All those drivers who are currently racing are going to have more fans because of it, and deservedly so.
Well, I mean, you just mentioned Ernie Francis Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, he was already, his name was out there, but it's really out there now. He's on Broadway, right?
Right.
Right. He's on Holiday Inn gigs are over. You're on Broadway now, son. So.
Something else I really liked watching those behind the scenes videos. You really took that role of that mentor cheerleader type too. I felt like you didn't come in there, and I mean, at least how it showed, like I said, behind the scenes, you were so encouraging to everyone. And I really respected that, because you could be, like anybody, you could be gruff, you could be, what have you, and you just took that role, man, and you were like that support system and pushing these people along, and and I thought that really was impressive.
At 66 years old, that's all you're going to do now is be a cheerleader, son. You might have some wrinkled up legs, but you're going to, it was, everyone there had their legacy. Their legacy was set. They've done everything except for the young kids. They're building theirs. But you want the young kids, you where they want to go, because that's how he used to think. That's how I thought.
Right.
Tony Stewart, he thought that way. Castleton, everybody in there, Kanan, they all thought the same way as these young kids. You want to motivate them, because we're not going anywhere anymore. We've done it.
Right.
Right. We're past your glue factory.
So you kind of get back to your racing career. You wanted to do Formula One so bad, and it just doesn't work out. At the end of the day, it doesn't happen. And then you come over, and you do your road racing in America and that, and to high degrees of success with Dan Gurney. Just, what an iconic deal that was. I mean, just so great. Like when you get on top of the car and do the Ollie shuffle, and, just such a great thing. And then, we get to the Speedway, and you have a couple stops and starts, a couple of things that kind of look like they're going to work out, and they didn't work out. And then you made the show. And I'm sure you've been told this 100 million times, but man, that coming down pit lane, when I watch that today, I still think that's one of the greatest shows of, if you want to encapsulate what that place means to a driver, that, when you're just so excited to come down pit lane, that was just one of the most iconic moments ever at Speedway.
I mean, when I look at pics of that, I can recall it just like it was yesterday. It's the toughest place, in my opinion, to race anywhere in the world. I mean, Fernando Alonso will attest to that. He is two-time Formula One world champion. And Indy's the type of place that it can get into your head. If you just have to. One thing that was great about Al Alonso Jr., who I am very close to, Al and I, he's like my little brother, and Bobby Unser, and they said, just stay cool. Don't let it get into your head. Make the car work. When the car is working, it's going to be a fun ride. If it's not going to be a nice ride, and you've just got to not let it get to you. And when it all worked out, we had no engine failures. And another thing, Tim Wardrop was such an awesome engineer. I had 100% confidence in him to make the car go fast. Now all we had to do after that was make the engines survive. And it did.
Yeah. I actually met Tim during the latter part of his life. I volunteered at Tice Carlson's team when they were Fan Force United the year that they had John Alesi in the 500. And Tim was the engineer. Very smart guy and very funny guy as well.
Oh, he's a great sense of humor. Technically, he's brilliant engineer. And in Indy, he had that place figured out. And despite being under the gun that we were time-wise, he was cool as ice. And hell, he actually lived with me for 3 months. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And around 1995, I think it was, or 1995. came out to California and spent 3 months, and just great fun. Hell of a party or two.
Oh, I've heard stories. I've heard some stories.
Oh yeah. There we were going to Vegas like every other week for 3 months.
I think he may have had you beat on girlfriends.
Maybe. We'll have to do some tabulating.
So 1985 was the first year you actually appeared at Indy. And this is something I don't think you guys talked about in the movie, but you were you were entered in the 1984 race, correct? But you never showed
85.
up. So it wasn't 84, because I was seeing online it said
it was 1985.
Okay, because online, and trust me, internet is not always right, but it's in 1984, Doug Shearson Racing did not appear.
Oh yeah, okay. They entered me.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, it was entered, right? But then the money didn't come through. You're correct with that, right? Doug Shearson, and he put my name down on entry, but the money never happened. The sponsor deal.
Right. So 1985 comes, and then. And I know you talk about this in the movie, but the big thing they were talking about was the windscreen, right? Basically someone had placed the windscreen. That was part of it.
That was just one of the elements. I don't know why they focused on the windscreen so much. There was a lot more that was happening chassis wise than just getting, a 200 mile per hour blast. It was there was the crew chief and I think his name was Paul Leffler.
Paul Leffler, yeah.
That was the biggest issue. He never said one word to me. Not one word. And at Indy, you better have some communication.
Yeah.
And it better be good. And he didn't like me. And it took me about a couple hours to realize I don't like you either. And it's best we part ways. That was the biggest deal.
Yeah, I'd been around Paul a little bit in the midgets and sprint cars, but I never knew him. And I always knew him to be pretty quiet, but I didn't know him to be like in a working relationship like that. And it was really sad to hear, because I think he really missed out, truthfully. I mean, he had a chance to work with a supreme talent. He just had to
I don't know,
change his mindset or whatever.
I don't think that there was several elements that definitely were an issue. One of the elements, which was probably a small part, but I didn't come from his genre. I mean, he came from midgets, and that's where and those are the drivers that he was dealing with, and he knew. And next thing you know, I walk into the garage, and he had nothing to say.
That's just too bad. I mean, just a shame. It really is.
But it worked out. It happened the way it happened. The bottom line is, it happened.
Right.
Right. You might not win the war the first time out, but you keep firing missiles. And eventually you're going to get it done. And we did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the mindset you have to have. And, and that's that competitive spirit that a racer has to have, because there's so many highs and lows in this sport. And you got to be somebody who can just push through them. And if you can't, then it's a hard road. It's a real hard road.
Oh yeah. And for me, it was even harder. And I don't have to tell you why.
Right.
But I wasn't ever going to. I wasn't going to quit. That wasn't even a consideration. That wasn't an option. It was just making sure that you keep racing and you keep winning. And when Bill Cosby called me, that was it. And
Yeah.
despite what happened to Cosby later on, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been there. That is a
Right.
fact.
Yeah. No, I mean,
That is a fact. I would have not been in the Indy 500 if he hadn't called me and said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to do Indy 500 and IndyCar." "What's it going to cost?" I said, "Well, you're going to have to write $500,000 check right up front to at least, guarantee, okay, come to Vegas in 2 days and I'll have the money." That's how he was. And everything he said he was going to do, he did it and more. All right. Just like that. You didn't have to chase him. You didn't have to call him. He did it.
Right.
So was that your first time? So when was the first time you actually met Bill Cosby? Was it that phone call, or
Yes.
did you meet him?
It was that phone call. I had no idea that he knew the name Willy T. Ribs. I had no idea.
So how did he how did he get your contact information, or how did he even know about you to begin with?
Let me tell you what, those guys can get your contact information in about 10 seconds.
Oh, I believe it.
Anybody on that level, just like that.
Right.
If Jeff Bezos wanted to find Willy T. Ribs, he'd find him in 5 seconds. It's amazing. My phone number was unlisted, and my dad called me, and it was right after a race at Sonoma, which I won. And I won the race on Sunday. I got a call on Monday. And my dad says, Bill Cosby called for you, because my number was unlisted. I said, I thought it was a Paul Newman joke, because Newman always called me with crazy messages and disguised voices, right? And in fact, one message I got from Newman, he says, and he had a disguised voice. He says, "My name is David Stern, and from the National Enquirer, and we understand you were bunging iguanas on a Denver street corner." Verbatim, quote, close quote. I said, "Whoever this is, iguanas don't get that far north." So he said, "Damn, Ribs, I never thought about that." But I thought it was a Newman prank. And then I called the number back, the number that my dad gave me, and it was him who answered the phone. And he was very brief. He was like 3-minute phone call. "What do you want to do?" "This is what I want to do." "Okay, I'm going to be in Vegas in 2 days. Call my assistant, Helen Keelhan. She'll have your flight plan paid, and just go to the airport." Yeah. Just like that.
Did Bill ever come to the 500? He never came to Indianapolis, did he?
No, but he came to the Meadowlands twice, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he came to the Meadowlands when we were running there, because that was close to his home in New York. He just right across the river.
Right.
Well, I had to feel good too. I mean, just he was such an iconic person, especially at that time, and to be able to work with him and man, just to get that kind of recognition, that your talent had kind of transcended enough to get that kind of recognition, that had to feel great. And
but at one race at the Meadowlands, Cart made him the honorary starter. He was to wave the green, and he waved the green flag. But he played a little joke on the flagman. He had the green flag and then reached down as the cars were coming and started to raise the checkered flag. And the guy, the starter, I don't know, Nick Ferrero, they pushed the flag down so the cars didn't see the checkered flag.
That's so funny. Oh man, I never heard that story. That is awesome.
Yeah.
And you guys were originally thinking, because I saw you at Don Kay's radio show once, you were going to interview him for a documentary, right?
Yes. Yes. And I don't know where that's at now. I do know that I have signed with Showtime. And Showtime is producing a TV series, a scripted TV series based on the film Uppity. And it will be produced by Brian Koppelman, who produces the show Billions, and Don Cheadle will direct it. 4 years, 4 years, 10 episodes a season.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. In fact, I was just on the phone with them before I got on Zoom with you.
Tune in next week for the second part of the Willy T. Ribs interview on the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Thanks for listening.